Wait, is it recording?
Yeah, it's recording.
Oh, hey guys.
Oh, hi, I didn't know it started recording.
So, happy first day of spring.
Uh-huh.
And I hope the Arizona Tea Company sponsored me for the shirt. So, yeah, that's cool.
Whatever.
Alright, continue.
That's it. That's all you gotta say with the sponsoring. You just want them to sponsor you so then we can make more money off you too.
Yeah, I like Arizona tea and spring is fun.
It's true. It is the first day of spring, so happy spring. Yeah, we all know we love the beautiful warm weather, so I don't know. Anyways, we are going to be reacting to MrBallen today. Hope you guys are doing well. This is second time reacting to MrBallen with Lauren, because I usually react to MrBallen myself, but today his video he just uploaded yesterday, what is it called? The Most Insane Man on TV. So I don't
like how you always forget the name.
Well, but I mean, I don't know what that's gonna. Hopefully, it's crazy. I don't know. Just hopefully, MrBallen always shocks us, and he's a great storyteller. Like I've said over and over again. So, yeah,
I know it's so amazing, like how good he is at storytelling when he doesn't even like rely on like a lot of extra effects and stuff, and it's just mostly him.
Yeah,
like
mostly
a background or something.
Yeah, mostly him, his voice, and his background images and sound effects actually too. Really
the occasional
great, so.
sound effects.
Yeah. But overall, he's great. So let's just get on in. You got anything more to add before we start?
No.
Okay.
Drink Arizona tea.
Arizona. I really wish we could be sponsored by that. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
what a dream. All right, it is going in. Okay. Is that big enough?
Sure.
Okay, let's go.
Today's final story deals with a destructive, horrible, vile act that virtually anyone can do. However, there are no laws against it. But before we get into today's story...
Sorry to pause it for, like, the first time. I guess it's the 3-story one again. If that's what he's implying. Every time he's like, oh, today's last story, he said? Is that what he said?
Oh, so did he upload 3 separate videos on the same day?
Well, no, you've seen his videos where he has 3 stories.
Yeah, but why is this just the... Oh! Wow, I'm so stupid. So this video just includes 3 different stories within this video.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I guess this is one of his videos again.
I thought that this was just one story.
No, that's what I'm saying. I thought that too, but then now he just said...
When he said final, I was like, wait, is this his final season? Like, are there seasons? Like, I don't know.
No, what I thought he meant is that, like... Because whenever he uploads a video, he never says if it includes 3 stories or if it's just all one story that's 30 minutes long. That's what I'm saying.
He sometimes does.
Yeah.
But not always.
Yeah. But this time, I guess, he said final story, so there probably is 3 stories. Because
okay. I think we talked about this a little too
much. Sorry. Just making sure.
If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So if that's of interest to you, please ask the like button to be the back half of your 2-person horse costume for Halloween, and then when they accept, spend the night before drinking Miller Lite and eating falafel. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Today's stories.
It kind of reminds me of the Stranger Things song, the theme song.
I can see that. Long lost
In 2007, 60-year-old Michael Dick was living in Bow, East London with his wife and 2 daughters. While his life was not exactly exciting, it was good. He lived in a quiet and safe neighborhood, and Michael, who used to be a carpenter, was now semi-retired and got to spend the bulk of his time with his friends and family. But that year, something really started to bother him. 10 years prior, Michael had split up with his first wife, and after their divorce was finalized, his ex-wife and the daughter they had together, her name was Lisa, and she was 21 at the time, those 2 stayed in the family home in Sudbury, England, and Michael moved south about an hour and a half to Bow, East London. The divorce had been quite messy, and so Michael had not only lost touch with his ex-wife, he had also lost touch with Lisa. And so fast forward 10 years back to 2007, and Michael and Lisa had not spoken since the divorce, and Michael found himself suddenly feeling this unbelievable wave of grief over the loss of his relationship with his first child. And so after speaking with his current wife and his 2 other daughters, he decided that he had to go find Lisa. He had to be reunited with her. The only problem was he didn't know where Lisa lived, he didn't have her contact information, and he didn't know where his ex-wife was, so he couldn't even ask her how to get in touch with Lisa. However, he did have the street address of where they used to live in Sudbury, England, and so he decided that would be his starting point. So in August of that year, Michael and his two other younger daughters, they hopped in the car and they left Bow, East London, and they headed up to Sudbury. And when they got there, Michael navigated to his old street, which had brick houses lining each side of the road, and he drove down until he spotted his old house, and he parked right out front, and then he alone hopped out of the car and he walked up to the front door. He took a deep breath, and then he knocked on the door. When the door opened, it was not Lisa, it was not his ex-wife, it was some other family that he didn't know, and they didn't know Lisa or his ex-wife, and so they said, good luck finding your daughter, but we don't have any information for you. And so Michael was crushed, but he thanked them, and he turned around, and he went back to the car, and he told his other daughters about what he had just learned, and then from there, the trio just kind of began driving around Sudbury, half looking for Lisa out on the streets, although none of them thought they would actually find her, and then also kind of discussing what they were going to do next, because now they had nothing. And so as they're driving around the streets of Sudbury, they come to the realization that their best bet at finding Lisa is putting some sort of story in the local newspaper that hopefully she would see, and then she would contact Michael. And so they drove to the headquarters of the local paper, the Suffolk Free Press, and they went inside and they managed to speak to a reporter. And after telling the reporter Michael's story about how he's lost touch with Lisa, the reporter thought, you know what, this is actually a pretty interesting story, and I'd be happy to do a small feature on you guys. And so the reporter, along with a photographer, brought Michael and his two daughters outside. They took a picture of them, and then they told Michael, in the next edition of the paper that will run in a couple of days, we'll run this picture along with a little write-up about how you're looking for Lisa, and we'll put your contact information in there, and hopefully she sees it and she reaches out to you, and you can be reunited and live happily ever after. And so Michael thanked the reporter and the photographer, and then he and his other two daughters hopped in the car and headed back to Bow, East London. In 2007, at the same time that Michael was beginning his search for Lisa, Lisa was actually beginning to think, you know what, I want to go find my dad. Lisa was now 31 years old. She had 3 kids of her own. She was married. She had moved out of Sudbury to a neighboring town. And she was thinking, I really want to have a relationship with my dad again so that my kids can have a relationship with him. And so she began speaking with her mother and with friends about how she should go about finding her dad, because like Michael, she didn't have his contact information. She didn't have a phone number. She didn't know anyone who would. And then when she went on social media to look for him, he wasn't on there. And so she was kind of at a loss. Then one day in August, she was at her office and she was in the break room and she saw a copy of the Suffolk Free Press sitting out on the coffee table. So she picked it up and she began flipping through the pages. And then suddenly she stopped when she saw a picture of herself. She saw her and her mother walking along the streets of Sudbury. She had been in Sudbury just a couple of days ago to talk to her mom about finding her dad and kind of strategies for how to go about doing that. And then Lisa glanced at the caption for this photo and she nearly fell off of her chair. The man and the 2 girls who were the main focus of this photo that Lisa was in were her father and her 2 stepsisters. She just didn't recognize them. She just saw herself in the back of this photo. Weird. So purely by chance, after being apart for over a decade, on the only day that Lisa happened to be in Sudbury talking to her mom about finding her father, she was literally 100 feet behind her father and her stepsisters as they were looking for her and putting out this ad in the paper to hopefully find her. And this one photo that the photographer took captured all of them in the same frame. Lisa would, of course, read the article and get her father's contact information. She would reach out, and initially, Michael actually thought it was a scam and didn't believe this was actually Lisa calling to say, I found myself in the picture of you in Sudbury. But eventually, he was convinced, and he drove right out to Sudbury, and he got a chance to meet his grandkids for the first time. And today, he and Lisa are still in touch.
Oh,
Before we get into our next
Well, that was
story,
very,
I want to talk to you about
wholesome.
today's sponsor,
that was actually-
BetterHelp. One of
that's
the
actually
hardest
positive.
things
I thought
about
something
struggling
bad
with your
happened.
mental health is that oftentimes you don't actually know you're struggling with your mental health.
Oh,
Before I
sponsor.
became MrBallen on the internet, I struggled mightily with depression. However, had you asked me at the time how I felt, I would have just thought I had a bad temper, not realizing that my bad temper was a symptom of deeper issues. Luckily, I was able to go outside of my comfort zone and seek out a therapist, and with their help, I was able to change my outlook on life and become a happy person again. Because therapy has had such a positive impact on my life, I recently partnered with BetterHelp, which is a very highly reviewed online therapy platform that I currently use, and I think it's totally awesome. And so far, the people from our strange,
have
dark,
some
and
of this
mysterious
stuff
community
where
who
it's,
have
like, just
also given
texting,
BetterHelp a
and
shot,
they have
they've
some
given
where
us
it's,
permission
like,
to share some of their
video
feedback,
call,
and
too.
as you
So
can
I don't
see,
know,
it's
was
very
this, like, video
positive.
call
BetterHelp
texting
is super
kind of
easy to
situation,
sign up
or-
for and
Yeah, it might
use.
look
You just
more
fill out
into
a
it, I think.
questionnaire that assesses your specific needs, and then within 48
I'm assuming
hours,
you
you
don't
are
actually
matched
meet
up
anyone in
with your
person.
therapist. Then you
Yeah.
schedule secure video and phone sessions. Plus, you can exchange
Oh.
unlimited messages, and anything you share is totally confidential. Also, you can change your therapist at any time for no additional cost. So, if you are even considering trying out therapy, I highly recommend BetterHelp as your starting point. If you're interested, make sure you go to betterhelp.com/MrBallen. That is betterhelp.com/MrBallen to get 10% off your first month. Okay, let's get back to the stories.
Graphic content. Well, that's just every video Mr. Ballen's ever uploaded.
If I
No,
told
it's the
you to
title of
picture
it.
the Amazon rainforest in your head, you would likely picture a dense tropical wilderness full of amazing and exotic animals. And you'd be right, that is a good representation of the Amazon rainforest. But what a lot of people don't know is that the Amazon rainforest is also home to a massive city. It's called Manaus, and it sits right in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, right along the Amazon River. And it happens to be one of the most violent places in the entire world. All it takes in Manaus is simply
so
walking down the wrong street or crossing the wrong person, and you can get shot or stabbed in broad daylight, and there's virtually nothing anyone can do to stop
Sounds like
it.
somewhere
In 1989,
similar.
a
I would just stay in
31-year-old
Manaus all day
former
then.
police officer named Wallace Souza decided to make a TV show about what it was actually like to live in his hometown of Manaus. And unlike other crime shows in Brazil that often censored out the most graphic content they covered, Wallace decided he wasn't going to do that. He wanted to expose the harsh reality of life in Manaus, and he felt like
Yeah, I
the
don't like
only
when
way to
people
do that was
censor
to show everything.
stuff
And so
like
that
that
year,
on
he
everything.
launched this show, which he
Yeah,
called
yeah.
Canal Livre,
I feel like
which
some things are
translates
just
roughly
too
to
important
free
to
channel. And
censor.
true to form,
Right.
there was no filter on what went on the air.
Yeah,
And so
which-
this show was shocking. Viewers were given a front row seat
I mean, yeah,
to
get a warning
freshly
ahead of
murdered
time for the
victims that are
audience. Yeah.
lying out in the road and slumped over chairs in restaurants and behind steering wheels. And the cameraman would zoom in on their fatal injuries, and they would zoom in on the faces of these people that have
Gosh.
just died. Every gratuitous detail, every blood spatter, every grieving family member of the victim who's crying out in pain, all of it was
you say about
shown
why?
on this TV show.
Yeah,
And then
I mean,
in
like-
between these very dark and
Um,
violent segments about gang killings and
Sorry, I don't mean to pause.
Mm.
Well, I was just saying that I think I think censoring like that on everything is super unnecessary, and I feel like, in my opinion, that something should be shown. But as long as the audience has like a warning ahead of time, knowing what they're getting
Yeah,
into,
I
just
mean, it's-
because.
Yeah, it's just literally like movies. Like they're gonna say like it's rated this, and viewer discretion is advised. So it's like, I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel like
I feel like that's important because people really need to know the truth of what's going on, and if you're censoring everything, you can't see the full extent,
yeah,
and you kind of need to be shocked to fully understand situations that you're never going to be a part of yourself, most likely.
yeah, it's a bit rough, but I mean, like, it's reality. Can't really
Yeah.
escape that. But yeah,
Because then you can have more empathy for other people's situations
true.
and see how things truly are. Like, because I feel like a lot of people live in a bubble in a way. Like, even me,
Oh yeah.
you know, you grow up in the same place your whole life. It's a little hard to know what else is out there.
Mm-hmm. I
and,
mean,
like,
really
what
sad.
to be aware of or what to, like, be cautious about.
Yeah, kind of sucks. It's a lot of violence, but
Yeah.
kind of a reality. So
I mean,
know.
yeah, no, it's super crazy that they're showing people's, like, actual dead bodies because
Mhm.
most things don't do that. But
Yeah.
I feel like some videos need to show stuff like that as long as it's not super overly insensitive or anything. Like,
Yeah, just don't like be.
don't be showing someone, like, like
Yeah.
naked or something. I don't know. Just
yeah, just like be
like-
respectful, kind
yeah,
of.
yeah,
about
be
it, I guess.
respectful, but like
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to censor everything.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
drug deals gone wrong, Canal Livre also had a much lighter side. They would bring on local artists to talk about what they're working on, to maybe try to sell some of their goods. The show would also focus on down on their luck families that needed help raising some money, and so the show was designed to get people to donate. And then also, for really no reason at all, there was a segment on the show where this puppet character would
That's
get into a fight with a man selling bread. It was a totally bizarre and
Okay.
shocking spectacle,
Just
and the
randomly
people
throw
of
that in there.
Manaus
Okay.
loved it. And then eventually, the people of Brazil loved it. I mean, this was an extremely popular show. Because Wallace was often on camera on Canal Livre, he became very famous and very recognizable. And so when he would walk around Manaus, people would see him and literally just start clapping and cheering for him. And as he and his show became more and more popular across South America, Wallace decided he didn't just want to report on crime, he wanted to fight crime. So, on air, Wallace began berating the government for not being able to protect its citizens, and he berated the police for not being able to catch the criminals. And then off the air, Wallace campaigned for and was elected to political office in Manaus, where he continued to push hard to reduce crime in the city. And so it wasn't long before Wallace went from just being a relatively well-known TV host to being one of the most beloved and influential and trustworthy people in all of Brazil. However, over the years, there was one strange thing about his show, Canal Livre, that people just couldn't wrap their heads around. This oddity was most obvious in a now famous episode of Canal Livre that aired sometime in the mid-2000s. This episode opens with a Canal Livre reporter making their way through a jungle, and there's a cameraman filming them from behind. And this reporter, they're very carefully walking through, kind of pushing branches out of the way and high-stepping over all the underbrush. And then at some point up ahead, you see there is a clearing, and there is a third person standing in this clearing, and they're clearly looking straight down at something on the ground that we can't see. But this third person...
I hate that.
Wait, you're counting his sponsors? Good for him for getting a sponsor, and
No.
representing something important.
If you want
That's
to
true.
eat healthy
See,
and feel
yeah.
your best, you've
Oh,
got to try
thanks.
cachava.
I can't actually.
Cachava is the
But I want
world's
to see what this. No.
person is very
was
occupied with whatever is on the ground.
Sorry.
And so eventually this reporter makes their way through the jungle into this clearing, and then as soon as the cameraman gets into the clearing as well, he looks down at what is on the ground. And what you see is what appears to be a log that has previously been lit on fire because it's still smoking and it's black and it's charred. But as the cameraman zooms in, you see there are hands on this log. So you realize it's not a log, it's a human being who's obviously deceased. And based on how badly charred they are and how much they're still smoking, you realize very quickly that this person must have been on fire very recently as probably just a couple of minutes ago. Like right before the camera got here, this person was on fire. And so as you're kind of seeing this
hope
shocking
not.
image, the reporter suddenly talks about this person like he knows all the details of them already. He says, this person, it's a man, and they were not shot to death. They were doused with gasoline and burned alive. But at this point, the police had not come out. They had not seen this dead person
Yeah, that's
yet.
way too soon.
And
with
so
all
it
these
made no
details.
sense that
So
the reporter would have
suspicious.
all this information on hand because no one knows this stuff yet. And based on just looking at this person's body, it was too badly burned to be able to tell whether it was a man or whether they had been shot or not or whether gasoline was used. But when Wallace was questioned about where he and his reporters got their information from, he just said, look, we're a very popular show and people call us often before they call the police and they give us information about what's happening in the city. And we have a huge team. We watch the police headquarters, we listen to the police's radio, we watch the morgue, we have loads of informants all over the city, and so we just get our information really, really quickly. And this answer was enough until 2008. That year, in October,
people would
the
go to the
police
cops first,
arrested a
yeah.
former Manaus police officer who just went by the name Moa, and they accused him of 9 murders. And so they throw him in jail. But
Jesus.
Moa, despite the seriousness of the charges against him, seems totally unfazed. It was obvious he had some sort of powerful connection outside of prison, some person or some entity that he fully expected was going to, at any moment, swoop in and magically get him out of prison. But that didn't happen Moa just continued to sit in jail, and at some point that began to sink in that he was kind of on his own, and so he began to talk. And the story he would tell would shock Brazil. Moa would admit to having killed some people, but he would tell police, look, I'm just the assassin. The person who hired me for these killings is Wallace Sousa. It would turn out Wallace Sousa started his show, Canal Livre, with the best of intentions. But when his show became massively popular, and it in turn made him, Wallace, also massively popular and powerful, he became corrupt. And at some point, after his meteoric rise, he formed this very powerful drug cartel, and then in an effort to bolster his illegal dealings and to boost his show's ratings, he decided to start contracting hitmen like Moa to start taking out rival gang members in Manaus. And he would tell the hitman how he wanted them killed and where he wanted them killed and at what time. And then after the hitman agreed to do this, he, Wallace, would go tell his camera crews exactly where to go and at what time so that they would be arriving at the murder scene literally as it was happening or right afterwards, allowing them the opportunity to get all the gory footage before anybody else. It would take the police a year to finally compile enough evidence to charge Wallace with murder, but they would do it in October of 2009, and eventually Wallace would turn himself in. However, he denied everything. And then before he went to trial, he would die of a heart attack in prison. And so we never actually got to learn the full extent of what exactly Wallace Sousa had done, how many people he had assassinated, and how many of them were shown on his TV show. But we do know that at least 3 of his assassination victims were shown on his TV show, one of them being the person that was found out in the jungle. They really were a man. They really had not been shot. They had been burned alive with gasoline at Wallace's discretion. But in the end, the person who paid the highest price for the Canal Livre killings was Moa, the hitman who blew the whistle on what was going on with the show. On New Year's Day in 2017, a crime syndicate overran the prison where Moa was being held. Now, they had lots of targets of people they were going there to kill, and one of them was Moa. They were furious with him that he spoke to police and gave up information about the drug trade in Brazil. And so eventually, this angry mob of gangsters made their way over to Moa's cell, and when they found him, he was pressed up against the back of his cell wall, basically as far away from the bars as he possibly could be, and he began pleading for his life, and this horde was not having it. They were only there to kill him. And so they all have machetes and knives, and they're looking at him through the bars, and they say, you know, we're going to come in there, we're going to cut you to pieces. And so then they start banging on the door, they're trying to hack the lock open, and Moa, he can't do anything. All he can do is kind of just keep himself all the way to the back of the cell and hope they don't get in. And eventually, they can't open the door, and they know it. And so they do the next best thing. They reach through the bars with a lighter and they light Moa's mattress on fire. And so Moa was trapped. He had nowhere to go. And so eventually the fire reached him and he burned alive.
Oh, jeez. Well, first of all,
at least he wasn't cut alive. But that's not any better.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I'm gonna say he deserved that because, you know, he did kill those people, but it's like, I don't know, kind of hard to have an opinion on it because he was hired, so it's like, yeah, technically, I guess he's part, you know, he is fully responsible.
But I guess he still chose to do it, so
yeah, so that's still, he deserves it. It's like that's still pretty brutal. I don't like being burned to death. It's just that's just kind of a pretty bad death. That's a pretty bad death.
I mean, I don't think anyone wants to be burned to death. I don't think anyone's like, yeah.
No, it's just funny. Just
give me that fire.
It's just like they come in with machetes and then they're just like, oh, we can't open the door, so or the cell, and then we're just gonna burn the cell alive, or you alive, basically. That's just okay. Anyways, there's an ad coming up.
Wait, I'm surprised no one came by.
In 2010, 18-year-old Renee Marsden was living in Sydney.
Hold on.
Thousands of people are reversing their type 2 diabetes with this 6-second method from the comfort of their own homes.
What is this?
I don't know, that's such a weird, like...
Sydney, Australia.
That was weird. Wait, sorry,
crotch shot there.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I was just saying it's weird that the security team, like, didn't notice this fire happening, or, like, any of the police officers. Like, this was in prison, right? Like,
yeah, pretty sure it was.
Yeah, prison. That's what it says. So how did they not notice that there was this big fire going on?
They didn't care. The mob was already there, and they were gonna just.
They were just like, yeah, whatever. Let them do what they do.
Maybe they're criminals. They deserve it. Who cares?
Crazy prisoners, whatever. And just like walk.
That is crazy though. This is why illegal stuff. It's just that's crazy. Yeah, but.
Live.
Sorry, I had to just rewind the gap.
Is this the
In 2010, 18-year-old
Crazy.
Renee Marsden was living
so,
in
yeah.
Sydney, Australia with her parents and her 3 siblings. Renee was a very outgoing person who had a big circle of friends, and she was also very close with her family, especially her mom, Teresa. Teresa had given birth to Renee when she was only 19 years old, and so now that Renee was a young woman, because of their closeness in ages, the two had become very close friends instead of mother and daughter. And so because of that dynamic, Renee found herself always going to her mother to tell her anything going on in her life.
That's
She
honestly-
was
it's
her
like Gilmore
confidant.
Girls.
And that year, something major had disrupted Renee's life, and so naturally she went to her mom and she told her about it. It would turn out Renee's boyfriend of nearly 2 years, who she was madly in love with, well, she had discovered he was cheating on her and didn't actually even care about her. He had sent these text messages that basically said as much. And so she confronted her boyfriend with these text messages,
douche nugget.
and he denied ever sending them. He said, look, I've never cheated on you. I don't know where those came from. I promise I've been faithful to you this entire time. But Renee just
Do we believe
wasn't
him?
buying it, and so she had felt forced to break up with him. And so Renee naturally had turned to her mother for comfort and guidance, but Teresa, all she could really offer her daughter was, to remind her that time heals all wounds, and that certainly someday you will meet the right person for you. And amazingly, only a couple of weeks after this very painful breakup, Renee came home from work one day and she walked into the house and she was all smiles. And considering how unbelievably depressed she had
I did
been
not
over the
date
last
that
couple of
quickly
weeks,
after
I mean, this really stood out. And so when her mom saw her smiling and radiating happiness, she rushed over to her and said, what's gotten into you? Why are you in such a good mood? And Renee would tell her that, actually, I've met another guy. And so Teresa said,
wouldn't even be
who?
ready
Who
after
did you
a few
meet? Who is
weeks.
this person? And she would tell her mom that his name is Braden Spiteri. He was 23 years old, and he was a graduate of the King's School, which is a really prestigious boys' school in Sydney. And his father was this really successful business person who owned this big construction company that he was set to inherit later on. And so she was just raving about how amazing this guy was. And Teresa was really
These people
happy. If
connected
nothing
now, I
else, this was
wonder.
a very good distraction
Like
for
her old
her.
boyfriend and him,
And so she
yeah,
asked her daughter at some point,
that'd be a
how'd you
twist.
meet this guy? And Renee would tell her that Camilla had introduced them. Camilla Zaidan was Renee's best friend. They had met in high school. And Renee would explain to her mother that Braden was actually Camilla's ex-boyfriend, but they hadn't dated in a really long time, and there was no feelings between them. They were just friends at this point. And apparently,
Wait.
after Renee had this
So her friend, it's her friend's ex-boyfriend?
I'm guessing so, because what was the girl's name? The main girl, not Camilla. I guess Camilla's the friend, but what's the?
Didn't they say Renee?
Oh, Renee. My bad. Sorry, I was trying to remember the names. So Renee's the.
I'm
girl
not good with names, so.
Well, I just because they're only shown on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess Camilla, her friend or whatever. I guess that what he just said.
I didn't expect that. That's
That's really weird.
small world, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Funny.
Can you imagine if I dated someone and you're like, oh, I used to date, or this would happen, but that would just be weird. Like, obviously we would know the situation, but
yeah.
it's freaking weird.
this really painful breakup, Camilla had just felt bad for her, and so she had gone out and found the best possible match for Renee, which in her mind was this guy Braden. Teresa knew Camilla really well because she was always over the house, and she knew Teresa's intentions must have been good, but she's thinking to herself, this is bad news. You don't want to have best friends, one dating the ex-boyfriend of the other. It's just bad news
Teresa's the
waiting to
mom then,
happen.
right? I'm trying to get
And so
this
Teresa
straight.
couldn't
Yeah.
even help
Okay.
herself, and she says to her daughter, do you really think it's a good idea to be dating Camilla's ex-boyfriend? But Renee would tell her mom, look,
No.
Camilla was
Like-
totally upfront with me. She just wants me to be happy. She thinks Braden is a good match for me. They don't have feelings anymore, not at all. She's totally in
I have a
support.
feeling
And so
there's something,
Teresa still very
Feelings
much
would
had
go
her
in that
doubts that
way.
this was a good idea. But she put those doubts aside, and instead she said, okay, well, can you show me a picture of Braden? Can I see what he looks like? And so Renee pulls out her phone and she finds a picture of Braden and she shows it to her mom. And right away, her mom is looking at this picture and seeing that Braden is a very handsome guy, big bright smile. But she sees in this picture, Camilla is very clearly laying on his shoulder like she is his girlfriend. And so
one
again,
who's
Teresa's
taken.
thinking to herself, this is not good. Someone is going to get hurt. But
Wow,
over the
she's
next
got
couple of
intuition.
weeks
Yeah.
and months, Renee and Braden texted
That's
each
moms
other
for you.
all the
Sorry,
time.
listen to your mom.
I mean, Renee had her
Yeah.
phone out basically 24/7 talking to Braden. The pair had made plans to meet up and see each other in person for the first time on several different occasions, but every single time they were set to go meet, one of them would have a conflict that would make it impossible to have this face-to-face meeting. And so before long, when
Wait,
Conflict.
I thought they'd already met in person.
No, apparently not. I guess it's.
Am I missing stuff? I'm getting super confused with this
No,
story.
no.
I think there's just too many people and my ADHD's like acting up.
No. I guess based on what he said, basically they've been just over like virtually. They haven't met.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess that wasn't.
So
presented, but-
Camilla basically orchestrated this entire thing and was like, this guy that I dated would be good for you.
I mean,
You
I
should
guess.
give him a chance.
I don't know. I would definitely be like, okay.
That's just so sketchy.
Yeah, nah. That's weird. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like something crazy about to go down. But
they just could not get a meeting established, they kind of stopped trying to have face-to-face meetings. It was almost like
Wonder if
they
he's
had
still with
built
Camilla
this
on the
really
down low.
strong, flourishing
of meeting
relationship
up with
all
her.
via their
Maybe.
phones, and it just was getting more and more awkward to actually go out and see each other in real life. It was just more comfortable doing it all on their phones. And so this digital-only relationship
Yeah.
between Renee and Braden continued for almost a year
surprising.
until January
Shocking.
of 2012 when something horrible happened.
Oh, dear.
Braden was in a horrible motorcycle accident. He survived the accident, but his passenger, his best friend, this guy named Richie, who was riding right on the back of his
Oh.
motorcycle, he didn't survive. He was killed in the
awful.
That's really
accident.
sad.
And it was determined that Braden was driving recklessly, and so he was charged
Was he,
with
like, drunk or
manslaughter
something, or
and
did he drink?
convicted and sentenced
Don't know.
to 2 years in prison. Even though Renee's mother, Teresa, was totally upset about this accident, I mean, she did understand someone had lost their life and now Braden was going to jail for 2 years. She understood the seriousness of this accident. But at the same time, there was a part of her, her motherly,
relieved.
protective side of her, that was kind of relieved for her daughter. She figured with Braden being out of contact for 2 years in prison, that their relationship would end and Renee could go pursue somebody else who was not an ex-boyfriend of a close friend and was someone that she could actually see in person and not just have to text with all the time.
Yeah,
but
like-
surprisingly, after
Okay, that's so surprising that they managed to have like a digital like communication for that long, like a year. Like,
I think it just depends. Yeah, it does definitely seem strange, at least
how
personally.
do you keep that kind of communication going for that long? Like,
I don't know. I guess some people are just.
I could maybe talk to someone for like 2 months, and then I would probably be like, all right, moving on.
Yeah, I think it just all depends. Like
Like if I
obviously
didn't
that's-
meet them in person, obviously, it would probably
Yeah.
be a very short communication.
Yeah, I guess to us definitely that seems weird and that's not preferable. But I guess some people, if it works, whatever. Go ahead.
I mean, I guess they just really liked each other and they couldn't meet in person, so they're like, let's keep this going.
I guess so. Really weird.
But it's also suspicious, like you said, that they couldn't meet in person and it'd been like a year, like there wasn't any time at all. Like
Yeah.
even an hour just to like meet for food.
Yeah, that is weird. Don't get it, but
Braden was transferred to Goulburn Prison, which is where he'd be serving his 2-year sentence. It's located about 2 hours to the south of Sydney. His family smuggled a phone somehow into this jail, and he was able to
Somehow.
continue texting with
Oh,
Renee.
wow.
And so
Oh.
after he was incarcerated, they just picked up their relationship like nothing had changed. Now,
wait.
Renee's family did not like this.
Not to interrupt, but I'm just trying to imagine that communication. Like you're like, hey, good morning. How's your day going? And he's just like, yeah, you know, the usual jail like, routine.
like I know I've heard people like having relationships through prison and jail, but it's just like if that happened, I probably would not keep a relationship going like that because I'd be like, okay,
Like
well,
you've heard about this regularly? Is
No,
what
no,
you're
no.
saying?
Like I probably know.
I don't really-
It's obviously like not a regular thing, but I've heard like stuff like that happen before. And
Yeah, you'd
people
be
are
like, oh,
weird.
what are you up to today? Oh, just, you know, doing regular prison. I don't know what people do.
Yeah. To be honest, I would if I really wanted to go see this person or guy, I'd be like,
I
okay,
guess
why don't I just
they talk in with the glass in between them and the phones.
I don't know. Yeah, I would just go in person. I just like over virtual is just still kind of dumb. It's just
Yeah, I'm gonna go visit my boyfriend in prison. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, yeah,
this
it's
development,
very
and they
weird.
told her as
If it
much. They
works for
thought
you,
this was
though,
a
I mean,
bad idea, that this was the wrong path for her.
You do you.
But Renee didn't care. She was totally in love. And in fact, over the first couple of
You haven't
weeks
even
that
met in
he was
person.
in
I
Goulburn
know.
prison, their relationship only intensified. They actually agreed to get married as soon as he was released at the end of
You have to meet in
2013. And
person
in fact,
first.
Renee had
That's
already
hilarious.
begun making wedding preparations.
Renee's
She'd
so
gone on
pretty,
eBay and
though.
found
It's
this
just
beautiful
like-
tiara she would wear on her
Okay,
wedding
makes it
day,
what?
and she
No,
had
I know,
contracted
I know.
a wedding photographer, and she had even contacted the Greek consulate to ask if it would be okay if Braden were allowed to enter their country, because they were planning to have their honeymoon in Greece, and Braden was going to be a convicted felon, and so she needed permission for him. But in August of 2013, just 2 months before Braden's expected release date, something changed. Renee's mother, Teresa, got a text message from Braden, something she had never gotten before, and it said, "You need to check on your daughter. She's talking about killing herself." And so Teresa is totally taken aback by this message, and she goes right into Renee's bedroom where she is sitting on her bed, and her mother sits down next to her and says, "Honey, are you okay? You know, what's going on?" And Renee would look up at her mom and say, "Yeah, you know, I'm fine. What's going on with you?" And then Teresa would hold out the phone and show her the text message from Braden, and as soon as Renee saw it, she kind of sighed and looked at her mom and said, "I'm not going to hurt myself. We just broke up. Our relationship is over." Teresa knew this was going to be an extremely hard stretch of time for her daughter, with another painful breakup here. But at the same time, Teresa thought to herself, this is probably for the best. That relationship just had bad news written all over it from the start, and so now
And I'm also
she can begin to
thinking-
heal and move forward.
I mean, I'm also thinking about the fact that it just dawned on me, you know, he is in prison because he was reckless and killed his friend. So that also, like, bad choice, bad judgment on her part.
Yeah, for
Trying
sure.
to, like, it's like she
So-
just completely overlooks that. She's like, "Oh, it's fine. You killed your friend. So what? Let's get married." Like, that's just so weird.
That's just really funny.
That's
Oh my
almost
God.
sort of desperate in
I
a way.
know.
With her life. And so Teresa and Renee would sit in the room for a while just chatting on the bed, and then eventually Renee would tell her mom that her plans that night were to go out with her friends and cut loose and kind of just forget about this whole thing. And so Teresa sat in her bedroom on her bed as her daughter stood in front of the mirror and got ready, and then once Renee was ready, she and her mom hugged and kissed, and then Renee told her mom she'd be back soon,
And then she's
she
never
left
seen
the
again?
house. A few hours later,
I don't
Teresa
believe
received
this.
a text message from her daughter, and it started with, "Mom, I love you so much, and I'm sorry for the pain I'm about to cause you. You can still talk to me though, just
Oh my
call out
God.
my name and I'll be there." Teresa read this message and didn't really know what to make of it. She knew her daughter was almost certainly very upset about this breakup, but she didn't really understand the context of this message, and so she called her daughter. She didn't pick up, so
my
she
name.
called her again,
How cryptic
and
is
after
that?
that second time her daughter didn't answer, she sent her a text message that just said, "Please call me back." But she sat there kind of waiting for her
I would
daughter's
wait.
call, but it never came. And so Teresa, starting to feel a little bit worried about her daughter, she called Camilla and she asked her, "Hey, have you talked to Renee tonight? Because I can't get in touch with her." And Camilla would tell Teresa that actually, yeah, I just got a very strange text message from her that just said, "I love you, I'm sorry." And so at this point, the two women understood that there could be something very wrong with Renee. And so they met up and drove all around Sydney, going to all the places that Renee was known
texting
to
them
go to.
more?
But after
Yeah, that's
several
what I
hours of
think.
looking and
I
not
don't-
hearing
that's just a
back from
guess.
Renee, they really didn't know what to do. And so the two women drove back to Teresa's house, so Renee's house, and they went inside and they sat down. And at that point, Teresa's husband and the rest of Renee's siblings, they were all there.
Oh yeah, no, because it's a cover up, because he like showed the mom the messages like, "I want to kill myself," and so now he's using that to like kind of prelude to this. So yeah, he could be.
Yeah. Okay, just a hypothetical guess. So, I mean, it could
And everyone's just kind of sitting around wondering what to do next, when around 9:30 at night, they heard a knock on the door. And it was the police coming to inform them that they had found Renee's car parked in an area that it shouldn't have been, but Renee wasn't there. And so they were coming to ask if they knew where she was and why her car might be out there. And so at this point, the family is totally terrified. They tell the police about these strange text messages, and then before long, the parents parents just rush outside, they hop in their cars, and they drive out to where their daughter's car is. And where Renee's car was parked was in an area called the Gap. It basically was this sheer cliff overlooking the ocean. The parents got out and they searched their daughter's car, but there was no sign of where she had gone based on the car. And so they began running up and down the cliffs. There was a sidewalk that kind of ran parallel to the edge of the cliff, and they're running up and down, hoping they're going to find their daughter, but there's no sign of her. And then at some point, Teresa climbed up to one of the highest points of the cliff. And when she got up there, she found her daughter's black flat shoes, and they were placed neatly together on the ground right in front of the fence that was there to prevent people from getting too close to the edge of the cliff. But despite an extensive search that night, they couldn't find any sign of Renee. She was nowhere to be found. However, the police would discover the following day that there was actually a camera that was looking at that section of the cliffs. And so they reviewed this footage and they found Renee. They saw what happened to her. And in this camera footage, you see Renee walking up the trail in the middle of the night, and she's
the ad. It's all. I love how the ads always go to the.
I know, right in the worst. What the heck?
If you are struggling to lose weight and secretly want to escape from the prison of fat, then you have to see this now. Dr. Lamb, a whistleblowing doctor from deep inside the weight loss industry, is breaking his code of silence.
Always be a thing. In this case, I don't need to see this. Kind of commercial.
That was an ad too. It wasn't even like part of this.
Yeah, no. Please censor that. Please censor that. I don't need that image in my mind.
Okay. Why isn't it? Wi-Fi.
And she stops and she takes off her shoes and she puts them down, and then she hops over that fence. Now, the fence was not right up against the very edge of the cliff. It was set back maybe 3 or 4 feet. And so she hops over the fence, and then she steps very carefully to the edge of the cliff, and she kind of peeks over the edge and then looks visibly terrified, and she moves backwards a few steps until her back is pressed up against the fence. And then she pulls out her phone and she sends 3 text messages. One was to her mother, which is the text about how she loved her and she was sorry for the pain she was going to cause her. And then the other 2 text messages were to Camilla and also to Braden. However, to this day, we don't actually know what either of those text messages said. And then after sending these 3 text messages, Renee takes her phone and she throws it off the cliff into the water. And then she sat down and began kind of shimmying herself forward towards the edge. Now, the camera did not actually pick her up falling off the cliff, but it's assumed when she went out of frame that she had fallen off the cliff to her death. Her body would never be recovered. Renee's death was ruled a suicide. However, her family, in addition to being totally devastated by this horrible loss, they felt totally confused. They had no idea why this had happened, but they were certain it had to have something to do with this recent breakup with Braden Spiteri. And so they tried to get in touch with Braden, but he wasn't getting back in touch with them. And so the family contacted the police and said, can you reach out to the prison where he is and set up a meeting? And so the police obliged them and they called Goulburn Prison. And when they spoke to the prison, they said, who? Braden who? Yeah, we don't have a Braden Spiteri here. We never have. And the reason was, Braden Spiteri wasn't real. Renee's friend, Camilla, had made him up. He was a fictitious person. That picture of Braden Spiteri where Camilla is laying on his shoulder, that was just some random person she had met in a club. Camilla had always been very possessive of Renee ever since they had met in high school. And at some point, she had just decided that she wanted even more control over Renee. And so the first thing she did is she convinced Renee that her earlier boyfriend, the one she'd been dating for 2 years before Braden, she convinced Renee that he had been cheating on her the whole time, he was unfaithful, that he didn't love her, and then she had created those text messages and given them to Renee and convinced Renee that that was something he had said, and before long, Renee totally believed it. She approached her boyfriend, he denied it, but Camilla the whole time is telling Renee, he's lying to you, he's been doing this whole time, I know he's a bad guy, and so Renee had listened to her best friend, and she had severed that relationship. And then almost immediately after that, Camilla swoops into the rescue and connects Renee with this Braden guy, Camilla's supposed ex-boyfriend, who really was just Camilla on the other side of the phone. And for nearly 2 years, Camilla kept this charade up. And Renee completely believed this was a real person, that Braden was her boyfriend. She loved him. And eventually, in June of 2013, so 2 months before Renee died, she confided in Braden, aka Camilla, that her friend Camilla was toxic and mean and controlling, and she didn't want to be her friend anymore.
Oh no.
And so Camilla, she's reading this and she's furious. And so she decides the only way to get revenge on Renee and regain control of her is to have Braden break up with her. And so 2 months later, on August 5th, 2013, so on the day that Renee died, she was out to lunch at around 1 p.m. with a coworker when she gets a text message from Braden that just kind of comes out of the blue, and it says, "I need a break from you." Now, this is around the time that they're planning their wedding. And so Renee is totally heartbroken, and she's trying to get in touch with him and call him. He's not picking up. And then fast forward to about 2:45 p.m. that afternoon, we know Renee called Goulburn Prison. It was the first time she had done that. Now, we don't know who she spoke to or what they actually talked about, but it's nearly guaranteed that she learned Braden Spiteri was not being held there. And so almost certainly she would have realized that Braden is either not real or Braden had been lying to her in such a huge way that the relationship could never work. And so no matter what, this chapter of her life was totally over. And so later that day, when she was sitting on her bed in her bedroom and her mom came in and she asked her how she was doing, it's very likely that Renee was devastated. She was crushed and probably kind of embarrassed about how badly she had just been duped by this Braden person, whoever that was. And so even though normally Renee would tell her mother everything, her mother was her confidant, she loved her mother, it was like she just couldn't bring herself to discuss what was happening to her. It was just so enormous, it was so overwhelming that she hid it from her mother. And instead, she just got dressed up, said goodbye to her mom, and then she headed out to the cliffs. No charges were ever brought against Camilla because catfishing, which is exactly what she was doing, which is using a fictitious online persona to lure people into relationships, well, that's not considered a crime in Australia. And Camilla, despite being pressed by the police and Renee's family, has never taken responsibility for this and has never apologized.
Seriously?
So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's
like,
episode and you haven't done this,
my faith in humanity just because of this. Like, oh my god, like the fact that someone can be that cruel and like evil, like,
yeah. First of all, number one, that was a really big twist right there. Number one, because we all kind of assume like, oh, they're bad guys and they just kind of cheated and just.
I kind of thought she was like forced into killing herself. Like maybe it was a situation where Braden's like, oh, like I'm gonna hurt your family if you don't kill yourself or something.
Yeah,
but
that
was
like
completely, since Braden didn't exist, that wasn't even.
It wasn't even like an actual.
So did Camilla like? I guess Camilla didn't make her kill herself. She just was so depressed that she just ended her life.
Yeah, but it's just like that's because that's just how that's exactly what happened. I just think that it's like, and this is a very controversial topic, I guess, because even if this, which I really hope this doesn't happen often, but if it does somehow, I just don't know.
I'm pretty sure catfishing happens more than you'd like to think.
I just meant like this specific.
Oh, this extremes? Yeah, no.
Like, I just don't know if who is being charged. Like, it is that, because I know catfishing, MrBallen just said, is not a illegal, like a crime.
Yeah, so they just said Camilla was never charged and never had to apologize.
So I'm just
for the pain she caused, which is like
freaking
terrible.
So I just don't know if I'm like, oh, she basically murdered her, because it's just like obviously that's not legally.
Technically, she didn't murder her, but her actions were so terrible they led to the suicide.
Yeah. So it's like, it's very controversial, but it's just...
Yeah.
That was really shocking, because...
So should she be charged for murder? What do you guys think in the comments? Like, should she be charged for murder? Or, like, does it not count as that? Like, what should she have... Should she have, like, apologized or gotten any punishment? Like,
Yeah, because obviously it wasn't direct first-degree murder or something. I don't know, I'm just saying, but that was shocking because that's...
And I don't think Camilla went into this... like wanting her to be dead. I think she just wanted control.
Yeah, and
like she probably wasn't trying to kill her friend. She was probably just trying to like completely.
Yeah, and
she must be some, I don't know, maybe a narcissist.
Yeah, I guess sounds like it. But my question is, like, seriously, like, okay, sure, you want control over your friend, but what do you get out of it? And my question is, what do you get out of it? It's not like you're gonna gain. What do you gain? Just control. I just feel like, I don't know, it's a psychological thing, but I'm just saying it's just kind of crazy.
I don't know. Like, maybe it's the only joy she has in her pathetic life.
I guess so. It's just like, why even like,
not
yeah,
really.
You wouldn't even call that your friend. You would just be a controlling person. I don't know.
I did not expect that because
we assumed that the boys.
I was just thinking this was like a sketchy dude, and like I was wondering what he was getting out of being in a relationship with someone when they couldn't actually meet in person.
Yeah,
and like how this was actually keeping along, like, what am I trying to say? How this even lasted this long is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and but seriously, on the friend's part, that was pretty cruel. Yeah, definitely not a good friend.
It's just like,
for
so,
sure.
wait, I wonder do you think Renee realized that her friend was behind this when she killed herself? Or do you think she never even figured that out?
I have a feeling she just never figured it out. I just think she was like, oh, I've lost all hope.
Because that could have led to her wanting to die, because she realized that the one person she trusted the most just, like, betrayed her. That could have led to her wanting to...
Yeah, I guess we'll never know that part, but I have a feeling she just still kept thinking that, oh, this Braden guy is just fake, or never was real and never, like, cared, and that just kind of made her lose all hope and just give up.
I'm wondering what Camilla's plan was with the whole wedding situation. Like, what if it actually had happened? Like, what were they gonna do? Like,
exactly.
Like, hey, yeah, let's get married, and then they meet in person, and it's like Camilla there, or is she gonna get some other guy to pose? Like, how far was this gonna go? Like, how far was she gonna keep this scheme going, and how long was she gonna keep this up?
See, yeah, that part was just really funny. It's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna get married. Oh wait, but it's like, all fake. Like,
yeah, because I'm wondering if Camilla hadn't, like, ended her life, or not Camilla, Renee. If Renee hadn't ended her life, would Camilla have kept this going? Like, would she have found another fake dude? Like,
I just feel like this is
what would she have done?
Yeah,
like,
I just don't get all this. It's just like, you do all this for what? It's just stupid.
Like, I
don't get.
I hope she feels freaking terrible, but I also feel like she should have rotted in prison. But too bad catfishing isn't a crime.
It's apparently not illegal. So
like, what the heck? It should be.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty. I feel like, especially if it leads to someone's death, I feel like it definitely should be.
Isn't being a con artist illegal? Isn't that basically what it is?
Yeah, I think so. It's similar to, like, assassins. Like, you're like, oh, I didn't like, directly kill them, but I was involved in it. I don't know.
It's kind of like what we were talking about with the second story. Like, should that guy that
who got burned alive?
Should he be tied to his crimes? And I mean, it was his choice, so I kind of think he was.
But wow, those stories were crazy, especially that last one for sure. MrBallen never lies and disappoints about the craziness of these stories.
He always goes in, he's like, so this last story is gonna be a little, like, more intense than usual. And you listen to the first stories and you're like, oh, those are already kind of intense, and then you get to the third one and you're like, how much worse is this gonna get? And then it always ends up.
Well, the first one was actually very heartwarming.
It's the first one was fine. I'm mostly talking about, like, the previous videos, I guess. Usually, like, the first two are pretty intense, and then you're like, how can it get worse than that? And then it just, like, completely comes and hits you in the face, and you're like, oh, it is possible to get worse.
Exactly. Wow. But those stories were really crazy. I really hope you guys enjoyed that reaction, and let me know what you guys thought of that. I hope you, in a comment what you said earlier about whether you think catfishing or something like that is,
and what kind of, like, punishment she should have had, basically, if you want.
Yeah, just let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed that as well, Lauren.
I liked the first story. It was
that was only the positive part. Some humanity left. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Peace.